Okay. If everyone will take their Bible and open to Psalm 119, please. We're going to be on the third stanza this week, and I've always pronounced it Gimel, Gimel. I don't know, since I don't speak Hebrew, I don't know any other way any way to pronounce it. All of my Bibles spell the word the very same way. We'll be getting into some Hebrew words later on, where they're spelled differently in different Bibles. But in all the Bibles, as I said, I have the 8 verses are all spelled the same. These 8 verses are talking about the fact that ever increasing understanding, the more we understand the word, the greater our heavenly perspective on life will be. That is the theme of these 8 verses. And again, I remind you, they have 6 of those key words, those 8 words that we talked about early on. So let's read verses 17 through 24. They state, "Deal bountifully with thy servant, that I may live and keep thy word. Open my eyes, that I may behold wondrous things out of thy law. I am a stranger in the earth. Hide not thy commandments from me. My soul breaks for the longing that it hath unto the judgments at all times. Thou hast rebuked the proud that are cursed. They do err from the commandments. Remove from me reproach and contempt, for I have kept thy testimonies. Princes also did sit and speak against me, but thy servant did meditate in thy statutes. Thy testimonies also are my delight and my counselors." Again, he is following the word of the Lord. Let us pray. God of strength, the race you've set before us is not judged by miles or medals, but instead through the measure of souls by the life-giving promise of your salvation, the promise of your salvation that we receive through your word. May we trust in your grace and your mercy, and in your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, last week we finished chapter 2 in 2 Kings, and we started a discussion on passing the mantle, because chapter 2 closed with Elijah passing the mantle to Elisha. And we talked about what it symbolizes. Now, Barbara's going to be taking over and talking about other passings of the mantle in the Bible. And I remind you that we are still today passing the mantle. It is not something that was just done in olden times or in biblical times. Every day, the mantle is passed by someone to someone else. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Barbara and let her do the lesson.
Okay, as we frequently do, we're going to this is what we're going to discuss, but we're discussing with as we say, kind of veering off on a rabbit trail, but it all comes in and let me shut the door. I make annoying the rest of my family. Excuse me. It's hot when I shut the door, so I don't shut it till the last minute. Okay. There are other examples in the Bible. As Norleen said, we are still passing the mantle. And we're going to go over a few things of that at the end. But, excuse me. the mantle is still being passed, and it didn't originate with the 20th century or the 21st century. We know this originated way back in the Bible, and in fact, mentoring and passing the mantle was done even long before Elijah and Elisha. So we're going to look at a few of those instances, and what I do like about this rabbit trail is that it brings back to our thoughts some very, very important people in the early part of the Bible, and the influence. I know they were mentors. They taught. They were good, wonderful, God-fearing people. But I think I like the idea of mentoring, teaching, protecting, looking towards the future for not only the person they're mentoring and their success, but that their success will cause a community or an outreach for helping people. And that is so important. So the first one I'm going to mention is Moses being, now we think of Moses as being the big mucky muck, the king, he did it, okay. But he had a mentor. This wasn't his first job, so to speak. He was mentored by Jethro. Does anybody remember who Jethro was? You want to check that one, Marlene?
Yeah, go ahead.
Was that his father-in-law?
That was his father-in-law. That's right. He was, and I can never say her name right. Let's see. Again, the Z. Zipporah. Yeah, I don't see. It's written here somewhere, but I don't see Moses and Joshua. Okay. Yes, Zipporah, something like that. But Jethro was her father. They were not Hebrews, but Jethro, her father, greatly admired the Israelites because he saw what God did and how God allowed the Israelites to escape the Egyptians and all the things he did. He was most impressed. And there are several comments he's made in their story about, your God is wonderful. He had a great respect for Yahweh. And he was a very good man, a good moral man, and everything like that. So, so Moses was mentored by Jethro. Now, how did Jethro mentor him? If he was of a different religion, in a different upbringing, a different sect, different part of the world being brought up. But Moses escaped, okay? And so he ended up in the land where Jethro and his family was. So Jethro mentored Moses by providing him a safe refuge for 40 years. In that time, he offered very wise leadership advice when Moses was overwhelmed, and teaching him how to share his heavy workload by delegating authority to the capable leaders. Jethro welcomed Moses when he ran away from Egypt. Moses took care of Jethro's sheep in the desert for many years. He was exchanging help for help type of thing. I've got a little note here in our notes, and it says that Jethro drew alongside his overworked son-in-law and helped him organize leaders over the people of Israel. So Moses was really burnt out, okay? Moses took care of everything for his people. And when they settled in this land, he was, you remember they didn't have official courts in those days. They didn't have lawyers. And I would guess that they got through things a lot faster than we do in our courts today. They didn't drag out. And a lot of people did not make a bunch of money. They just decided who did what and what we got to do about it and had it over. I doubt they lasted more than a day, if they lasted a day, okay? But just think of all those Israelites there, okay? And what but they were, how many of them had, heck, you got a family of 5 people and they're going to argue. Okay. So we got thousands, and Moses was literally drained, and Jethro in his wisdom said, he took Moses aside and said, you know, hey, here, we can help this. And he was the one who mentored Moses, and the fact that he taught him how, he said, you need to delegate. Okay. And so he showed him how to, number one, really know who, this is what I love, really know who you're appointing to a position. And this to me is what politicians should be doing. But we've gotten so big and with so many things going on, we say, oh, I like this guy. He'll do what I want him to do. I'm going to appoint him. But Jethro showed Moses how to really select people who would do a good job and who would be honest, okay, and look for what would be the best for the people. And this is the primary thing Jethro, other than protecting him and welcoming him, was to teach him how to select these people and to work a system. And he said, you know, he said, Moses, you can take care of the big jobs. You know, if we got major issues or murder or something like that, you can take that. But there's no reason you have to do to settle all the little squabbles that happen. You know, we've got him today. This guy's tree is growing over my yard, and you know, this fence is partly on my property, or I lent him my lawnmower, but he never gave it back. Okay, these are things we didn't need to have Moses in on at the expense of all the other things. So this would help ease up for him. So, and you can see Jethro was the mentor. You do all understand what a mentor is, right? You help somebody. It's a teaching experience, really. And the relationship between the person who's mentoring and the person who's receiving is a very it's a close relationship and a trusting relationship. Okay, teachers are teachers and they're good, and many of them are great mentors. Okay, but we know for sure these mentors did not do it for their purpose, but for the purpose of the whole. Okay, so then in turn, Moses mentored Joshua. You all know who Joshua was. Joshua was the second in command, so to speak, and he's the one who actually brought the Israelites into the promised land, to Canaan. Okay, and he had to do it because Moses was told, you know, he did a no, and he overstepped his bounds, so to speak, and didn't trust the Lord's answer. So God said, you're not going into the promised land. But Jethro came back and told, Joshua came back from a spy's mission to see how many people they were going to be facing in a battle. And the others, I think it was three other men, 2 or 3 other men. And the others came back with, oh, there's too many people, we can't do this. Okay, Joshua told the truth. And so he was given the privilege. He was an incredible man. But Moses mentored Joshua over decades through hands-on training, spiritual apprenticeship, and public commissioning. So he really rounded out this man's the things that he could do for everybody. He tested Joshua in battle. He brought him to sacred spaces. He corrected him in love and formally passed on his authority so Israel would follow him. Moses named Joshua military commander to fight the Amalekites. He trusted Joshua with real responsibility while staying close by. Okay, so Moses helped Joshua prepared to assume the leadership of Israel when the people were ready to enter Canaan. So he had a really good teacher. I got another little spot there. Okay. Joshua was 2. Okay.
Barbara,
Yes, ma'am.
I have something to add. Now, you said something about, picking people to be leaders and handle, because you have a large group and you're trying to not manage everything yourself. He did have problems with people that were selected that were supposed to be good leaders.
Yeah.
So it wasn't an easy path to determine who was a good leader.
Very true.
And I think that speaks to today's environment as well. So
You nailed that one on the head. Huh?
yeah.
Yes, very, very definitely. We only can know it to a certain extent. We had if I'm on digress, it's like when we lived in East Texas, one of the men who was one of the state representatives was a good friend of ours, and we saw him out to a dinner one time with a man my husband knew from Frito-Lay. They'd worked together, and one of the jobs my husband had, in addition to keeping accounts, etc., was if there was any kind of a problem, he was sent. They used to call him the Axe Man. They used to send him to investigate. And this man did a lot of fraud. Unbelievable. They did not prosecute him, but they made some kind of a deal. But he was fired. So my husband went up to our friend and he said, "I need to talk to you." And he said, "I know you're running again. Are you looking to him for money or to help you?" And he said, "Yeah." He's off. He said, "Let me tell you a story." And he said, "I will tell you this. If you continue to work for him, and do what he wants, I will expose your relationship." And he said, "It's not worth it, But you're right. I mean, to the politician, he was just new in the community and, generous and this and that and the other thing. But underneath it, he was a scoundrel. And so, so you don't know until somebody tells you what's going on. Very, very true. Yeah, it's not easy to pick and choose. And a lot of them did have to be removed, but they tried their best to get it done. And I also know examples, I won't bore you with it, but I know an example where someone was asked to run for political office. He was a lawyer, asked to run for a DA, and the opposition came in and really tried to destroy his family. His girl, they really put the nose on, and they weren't bad people. And he said they were lies they were spreading and this and that. He said, "I'm not going to run. I don't want my family put through this." And so I don't know what kind of guy. This was up north. But don't we find voting a challenge, a real challenge? I personally don't go by party anymore. I try to look at the person running, because some are good, some are bad, some are different. And if I really don't know, I don't vote for them one way or the other. So anyway, okay. So the third one we have is, where am I here? Okay. The account of Deborah. Deborah was considered a mentor to Barak. And I'm sure you all remember, I'm sure Deborah remembers who Deborah was. And she was a judge and a brilliant woman. She was also a prophet. She was married. And so Barak was the person in charge of the armies, the military. So in the biblical account found in Judges, the prophetess and judge Deborah mentored and guided the military leader Barak by delivering God's direct command for battle. Remember, she was inspired by God with a plan. Okay, and so she went and worked this out with Barak. She also offered spiritual backing, and she accompanied him to the front lines to strengthen his confidence and secure his freedom. Now, he did say, when she told him the battle plans, he said, "That's all well and good. I will do this on one condition." And the condition was that she go with them. And so obviously he trusted her to lead him in God's way. A lot, let's face it, the pride of a lot of men over women, especially in those days, that's probably the last thing I would expect one of the military leaders to say. You come with me, guide me, be with me. Okay. Most of them would say, oh man, I'm in charge of this thing. I'm going to be the big war hero. Okay. But he didn't bring that out. He knew what she said came from God, and he was willing that she go along and, do what had to be done and not take, he didn't matter to him who got the credit. He wanted the job done. According to the biblical account in 1 Samuel, excuse me. Oh, that's wrong. Yeah. Samuel, the high priest Eli mentors. How did that get in there? I copied this out of off the screen, and I must have did something in here with. Here we go. Okay, according to the biblical account in 1 Samuel, the high priest Eli mentored Samuel by taking the young boy into the tabernacle at Shiloh. Okay, the prophet, skip that sentence. The prophet Deborah mentored and led the military command of Barak to victory by delivering God's battle strategy, demanding obedience despite his fear, and accompanying him into the battlefield to overcome the Canaanite army led by Sisera. So she, I don't know how that other sentence got in there, but sorry about that. Okay, so, they did win the battle. All was well and good, and he listened to her. Okay. Now, the next one is Naomi mentoring her daughter-in-law, Ruth. Now, I've got to admit, when I thought of Naomi mentoring Ruth, I thought, well, she showed her how to make a barbecued hot dog and how to wash the clothes in the river and that sort of thing. I never thought of it in these terms, but this is really neat. Naomi mentored her daughter-in-law, Ruth, through shared hardship, cultural guidance, and strategic life advice. Now, remember, Naomi was an Israelite, and does anyone remember what tribe Ruth came from?
Was it Moabite?
Moabite, that's correct.
He was a Moabite.
So they, they came from two different backgrounds, cultural, everything was totally different. But they loved each other and worked together. After they moved to Bethlehem, which would have been in the Israel camp, so to speak, Naomi directed Ruth on where to safely glean grain. She introduced her to family customs, and she later advised her on how to approach their kinsman redeemer, Boaz, which led to their marriage. So Naomi was a very wise woman. Naomi was widowed very early in life, and she had 2 sons and 2 daughters-in-law. And so after she was widowed, her sons both died. It was a time, okay? And she told them both to stay there and be happy, but she wanted to go back to Jerusalem. And I know we're all familiar with the beautiful story of how the one daughter-in-law with tears said goodbye, would miss her mother-in-law, etc. But Ruth looked at her and said, I'm staying. I'm going where you're going, okay? And we come up with the, how many weddings have we all been to where they sang, there but for you go I, okay? Whither thou goest, I will go. You've heard that a few times, Marlene, haven't you?
And whither thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God. That was Ruth's reply, or her reply.
Right. So that it's good thing I can't sing anymore, or I would have sung them another 50 times. So they she was a very good mother. And just a quick recollection, when they did get to the land, to the area and where the Israelites were, Boaz was a relative, and he was very wealthy, and Naomi told her she taught her how to glean the fields, how to do it right, because they needed to have someone who would help get food for them and this sort of thing. And that was going to be Ruth's job. Okay. So she showed her how to do it right. When I think of that story, how many of you had grandmas who sat on the porch and broke the string beans and would prepare the vegetables? Okay. And I can remember, doing that. And you had to do it when the crops came in, and there was a right way and there was a wrong way. Okay. And heaven help you if your grandma looked at you, you're not doing that right, so it was a very important job for her to have. And so she went, and she told her also how to behave and how to act. And so she definitely came to the notice of Boaz. And eventually we know that it led to Naomi even instructed her on what to do to get more of Boaz's attention, which Ruth followed to the nth degree. And so eventually Ruth and Boaz were married, and that helped everybody. So, but I love that story. It said on the sheet here, Naomi gave well-considered advice to her bereaved minority daughter-in-law to help her avoid a life of poverty and discrimination. Because remember, a widow in those days, especially if she was young, she did not face a good life. Okay, so Naomi's help here helped her to escape what society did in those days. Okay, let's see, that was 4, 5. Okay. Now the high priest Eli mentored Samuel. Okay, now we all remember the story. We spent so much time on this, where Samuel was born to Hannah, and Hannah was the beloved of her husband, and her husband had 2 wives, and the other wife had the firstborn, and Hannah was considered barren, but she made a deal, so to speak, with God. And she said, if you let me have a son, I will dedicate that son to the Lord. And she did. She finally became pregnant and had a boy. And Eli was the head of the temple at the time. Okay, so they had quite a interesting getting together, but you got to read the story. Okay, so anyway, she did, when he was able to walk and eat on his own, she brought Samuel to the temple, and that's where Samuel grew up. So the high priest Eli mentored Samuel by housing him, training him, and guiding the young boy after his mother Hannah dedicated him to the service at the tabernacle in Shiloh. Eli gave Samuel practical duties. He modeled a priestly life, and he famously helped him to recognize and respond to the voice of God. Eli brought Samuel into the daily routine and physical maintenance of the holy tabernacle. Now, most of you will recall the story, not offhand, but if I mention it, Samuel as a boy was asleep, and he heard a voice calling, Samuel, 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 and he assumed it was Eli calling him. So he went into Eli's room, woke him up and said, I'm here. And he said, well, what are you talking about? He said, well, you called me. And Eli said, I must have been a dream. Go back to bed. A little while later, the voice woke him up again. And he went into Samuel. And I said to Eli. And Eli said, no, you're dreaming. It's not me calling. Well, the third time he said, you calling me, you call. And then Eli realized it was God calling him. And it's where there's a hymn. I'm sure you've all sung in church. We sing it in our church. Here I am, Lord. Okay, and that was what Samuel was writing in and saying, here I am. Here I am. And that was the answer. It was so struck you that when we feel God's calling us to something, we will sit there and say, here I am, Lord, use me. Okay, and I love the hymn. It's a beautiful, beautiful hymn. Unfortunately, okay, now the relationship between Eli and Samuel was a good one, and but unfortunately, Samuel had two sons who were terrible. Okay, they were thieves. They raped the women, and when the women would come to the temple with offerings, they would make them guilty to come in, and they raped them, and all. They were horrible, and the Lord took them. You know, Eli was told, your generations aren't going to pass; they're no good. But he did do a fantastic job mentoring and teaching Samuel, who grew up in the. It's interesting because you have three boys, two of Eli's own sons, and Samuel, who was dedicated to God and by his mother, and under the same roof with the same man raising them, and two of them were thieves. They were miserable people, okay, and yet Samuel never went over to their side, okay, and he became the Samuel we read so much about in the Bible. Okay, so as far as Eli and Samuel, though the priest Eli failed with his own two sons, he helped Samuel develop into a man who could hear God's voice and speak to the nation. I love that statement. He heard God's voice, and it makes me stop and think. I need to sit back, relax, don't run around thinking I've got to be in charge of everything or whatever, and listen. And we need to do more. Yeah, you understand, Pam, right? Okay. We need to sit back sometimes and listen to see if God is talking to us, okay? Because yes.
More often than not, Barbara, I sit and say, please take this from me, these awful feelings, or this, like somebody was short with me. Please take these awful feelings I feel towards them. Don't let me open my mouth. Be self-control.
So that I like that, and I have done that. I've forgotten that. I'll say, God, just Sonny, shut up.
There's an AA saying,
yeah,
be still and know God.
Yeah. Yes. And that's we need to do more of that. Unfortunately, in 100 years, well, not even more, 200 years ago, people could listen better. But now we have, the TV's on, it's white noise. There's always noise going on. The street cars are going, it's very hard. And we need to find a place here and there too. Although I must admit, like you, Pam, I do more of that thinking when I'm under pressure and like, get me out of here. Yeah. Marlene?
I had a teacher once who said, we say we go to God for help on whatever it is we're having a problem with. But she said, but stop and listen to yourself. You go to God, but you're telling God more often than not what you want him to do to solve this, rather than saying, God, I have a problem, and then letting him solve it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 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 We really want to be in charge. We really, we really do. And it's hard to, and especially like if somebody really is an idiot or being really, really mean, it's very hard to keep your mouth shut. The best advice I've ever heard, and I've heard it recently, just walk away. If we could only not engage someone who is hurtful, okay, and just kind of walk away from it. The only time I can see that working is if they are, the case of bullying and things like that. We tend to interfere in that, but that's okay because we're helping somebody who needs help. And my son Christopher, I got a call. He was in a fight, so I go down to school. Okay, and he said, and he was not a kid to fight. Okay, and he said, Mom, so and so. He said, he was kept saying that he was telling everybody there's no God. And he said, that really got me mad. So I turned around and I punched him. And it was just kind of funny because he hated going to church. Okay, he did say prayers, but now he was like 9 or 10 when he did this. But it really bugged him that somebody was running around saying there is no God. It wasn't a matter of I don't believe in God, or it was he tells everybody there is no God, and that just really upset him. So I turned to the principal who I knew well. I said, well, I kind of like why he got mad. He said he wanted to stop spreading that word, So we have to pick our battles, I guess. That's where it goes. Okay, that was Eli and Samuel. Okay, 5, 6. Okay. How about the relationship and mentoring between Samuel and King Saul? Now here we've got a great difference in the nature of the people. But the prophet Samuel mentored King Saul. He anointed him under God's direction, hosting him as an honored guest, giving him prophetic signs to build his faith, writing down the duties of kingship, and offering ongoing spiritual counsel, prayer, and correction when Saul struggled to obey. He poured oil on Sam's head to mark him as God's chosen leader. Where am I here? 6, Samuel. Okay. Samuel identified Saul as a future leader. This is where the mentoring comes in. So God led him, to recognize Saul and the future he had. So he tried to shape him into a man of principle, even when Saul turned away from the Lord. Samuel challenged him on several occasions about his attitude towards God. So Samuel did his best. He was able to, in a non-religious, in a secular manner, to mentor him to be a king, to make decisions, to run the show, so to speak. Okay, but the problem came; he could never get over that pride. Okay, and the disposition, the attitudes that Saul had. So he successfully mentored him in politics, shall we say? All right, but unfortunately, he never could get over that hump to make him closer to God. It was never God-centered, but he did try. Okay, 7. Where's that? Okay. Now, it's a different story with Samuel and David. Samuel was around a while. He was a pretty old guy when he went. And so we've got him involved in with Eli and with Saul and with David, but they were all in that same time period. Okay. So Samuel, and this is interesting, Samuel did not mentor David in a traditional long-term daily teaching relationship. Instead, the prophet Samuel guided David by identifying his divine calling through anointing, offering a safe refuge when the king Saul tried to kill David, and providing crucial spiritual grounding. So where a lot of these others, they lived in the same environment, they grew up at the same time. So like Eli was able to work with Samuel. He was there every day, like going to school every day. Okay. The same, with Saul. Okay. These were David, but Samuel did not live with David. Okay. But God led Samuel to David. Okay. And Samuel's the one that said, when Samuel pointed out who would be the king, David was at the bottom of the heap. He was just a little old sheep herder, and his brothers were all so much older than he. so that it was quite a surprise. But Samuel had enough going for him that they took his word, and David was the one who then became king. Samuel and David. Samuel anointed David into leadership, and he stood by him when Saul was trying to hunt David down. So David went back to Samuel many times, but it's just that he didn't have that ongoing, from when he was a child relationship. Okay, and I think it's the last one here. 8, 6, 7, 8. Okay. Oh, this was interesting. I mean, I knew he did what he did, but I didn't understand the whole deal. We're jumping forward a bit, and this is the relationship between Mordecai and Esther. Now, Mordecai, remember, was a relative. I think he was an uncle of Esther's. Okay, and he kind of looked after her through her life. But I thought it was interesting how they put this. Mordecai mentored Esther by adopting her as a daughter after her parents died. He guided her to conceal her Jewish identity in the Persian court, maintaining a watchful presence outside the palace, ultimately challenging her to risk her life to save their people, with a famous prompt that she had achieved royalty for such a time as this. And that's definitely God's hand. I mean, you can see that their whole life and their relationship, Mordecai recognized that Esther was there for a purpose. Okay. And we all know how she saved the Jewish people, how she was willing to die for what she was doing. And it was also hard for her to hide her Jewish heritage. And she obviously was a beautiful woman, and she got into the court, and then she was selected, as one of the wives. But Mordecai was sharp as a tack, and he knew how to plot and plan, even to the point of, God intervened. I can't think of his name now, but he was the second-hand man to the king. And so he saw that he didn't like Mordecai. He knew the deal. He tried to get Mordecai blamed for what was going on. And
Haman?
Excuse me. Yes. Hamus, right? Hamus. Hamus. Is that it? Yeah. Okay. And Hamus got to the point where the king said, "Oh, okay. Well, let's hang him. Let's kill him." And so the gallows were built, and this is where Mordecai would have been hung to the death. Okay. But God intervened, and it turned out that, they were going to hang the person who did some act. And then they found out it was Hamus. It wasn't Mordecai. So, Hamus died on the gallows he built for another man. So God is so wound up in this story. I mean, it's a real quilt being woven, because it really worked out, and all of the God's appointed Mordecai and Esther carried out their part perfectly. And so again, that was the man mentoring her. So there's okay, we're almost at the end, and I was going to start something else. Okay, I've got some more, but I don't want to get into it yet, because I will read one more paragraph in a minute. But what I want you to do over the next week is I would like us to share, think of people through your life. We're all old enough that we've been influenced or not influenced by people. And I would like to hear some stories or sharing. They don't have to be long and involved, just a person in your life that either mentored you or you mentored that person, and see if we can find, because mentoring isn't dead, okay, it's here. So think about the people that have an influence on kind of supporting your Christian upbringing or bringing you into being a Christian. And because I wanted us to know that this is really mentoring is just a very, very important thing. I know, Marlene, we were going to say this to the end, but we've got just a couple of minutes. I'm going to need about 3 minutes to do my closing prayer. But do you think you could do the part you are going to do now, or do you need to save it?
Well, I'd like to, and Barbara, thank you. You've given us such a wonderful, I'm going to call it overview. But a thing I think we need to remember, and I guess I'm going to talk now about, I've been so blessed by the teachers I have had through the years who have taught me the things through the Bible. And I was thinking of this, especially when you were talking about Saul, and I'll say Samuel also. But the mentee, that would be you and me, has to listen to and accept what the mentor is trying to get across to them or trying to tell them. There is only so much a mentor can do. There has to be action on the mentee. Is there even such a word? But there has to be action on their part. And the action is they have to accept and act on what the mentor is trying to tell them to do. Because the mentor can't make them accept what they're telling them. And I think through the years, the problems we've had, and again, I go back to say Samuel and Saul, when they don't listen and act on, just hearing it doesn't do any good if you don't act on and follow, what your mentor is trying to tell you. So, any comments on that? I mean, to me, we see that today so much, where people don't listen or really follow what the mentor is trying to tell them. Any comments on that?
I think you have to have the trusting relationship. You have to have a relationship first, and then it has to be a trusting relationship.
Yes.
And then you have to ask for advice. I mean, sometimes a mentor will offer advice, but that's, I think, when you're defensive. And so maybe you don't listen. I know my mentors, mostly at work, it was important to have built a relationship of trust.
Mm-hmm.
And then foster that inclusivity in order to gain joint success.
Yeah. How often do we, I've done it, and I think if each of you is completely honest with yourself and think back, you'll realize that you've done it. I've gone to someone to ask for help, but my asking for their help often was telling them what I wanted to do or what I wanted the answer to be or how I wanted them to handle it for me. And did I realize that at the time? No. I think of David with the Bathsheba thing, and I can't remember the name of the prophet. That was Nathan. Pardon me?
Nathan.
Nathan. It was Nathan. Okay. And he told him, he came to him and told him that he was sinning with Bathsheba. And David listened. Now, there were still repercussions and there were still consequences, but you have to listen to what your mentor is telling you and not just tell them what you want them to tell you.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Barbara.
I'll finish.
I was just going to say, I think too often we're too busy. I know I am. I'm too busy telling people what I want them to tell me. Because otherwise, how are they going to agree with me?
Okay, next week we will pick up back again at the passing the mantle. Now we do know that what we talked about with mentoring was, working with someone. Sometimes, a mentor will pass the mantle, so to speak. But they are separate. Okay, when you pass the mantle, it's not really mentoring; it's giving your authority to the next person you want to succeed them.
It's just like passing the gavel.
Yeah, right,
Yes.
Exactly. It's a little gentler. No, but so we'll finish on that next week. And I would like to. I found something on. Sometimes social media is not bad, and this popped up. I don't know if any of the rest of you got it on my Facebook, and I just loved it. Our priest is concentrating on prayer and has been for the last a month or so about how to pray and what can it's just wonderful. It's very broad and it's very thing. But one of the things that I brought up in class Sunday, and then this popped up that afternoon, and I was thrilled. What about repetitive prayers? Okay, when we need something or want something, we become very intense, and our mind is, God help my husband through this horrible disease, or help my children to get through what they're getting through, and we totally focus. All right, but let's face it, when we go to church on Sunday, how often do we really concentrate on those prayers that we've been saying for all our lives? Okay, I believe in God the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth. It's just kind of, it's better than not praying. I don't mean in that sense, but we really don't become involved in what the prayer is. And I've been saying the Lord's Prayer since I could talk. All right, sometimes I'm into it, but the majority of the times I'll start it with great intentions. By the time I finish, my mind I just say it automatically. Well, I also never gave a lot of thought to exactly what the Lord's Prayer involved and what it meant. And I do know what it meant, but I never really put it in the total context. Let me put it that way. And I want to remind you, when we did this just long ago, and I don't know why we were into prayer, and we went into the what kind of prayers there are, adoration, adoration, petition, looking for forgiveness. Okay, there's 5 things I can't think of. Okay, so anyway, I found this, and it's on the Lord's Prayer, and I got an eye opener, because there are things I know, but I never really thought about it, and I never really opened my heart to them when I studied it. So I would like to read this to you, and then when we finish, let us say the Lord's Prayer slowly enough that we understand what we're saying, okay? When Jesus' disciples asked him how to pray, he gave them a simple but powerful prayer that Christians still pray today. The Lord's Prayer teaches us 5 important things. First, honor God. The words, hallowed be thy name, Begin by worshiping God and honoring Him. That's the first thing in the prayer, and that's the most important thing we can do in prayer. Next, seek God's will. God's will. All right? The words, thy will be done. Trust God's plan above your own. Third, trust God daily. The words, give us today our daily bread. Bring your needs to God every day. Next, ask for forgiveness. The words, forgive us our sins. Receive God's grace. Extend it to others. Seek God's protection. The words, lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Ask God to guide and protect you. The Lord's Prayer is, there's one more, I'm sorry. These are the words. For this is the kingdom, the power, and the glory. This is adoration. We recognize God as the supreme being. So this starts out honoring God, okay? And we end up praising God. And that's what we should be doing. All the other stuff is in the middle. It tells us the things of, talk to God, listen to God, okay? Do His will, ask His protection, etc. So these are the things. And in the last couple of days when I've said the Lord's Prayer, it meant a whole lot more to me when I thought about the words. So I would like us together to say the Lord's Prayer. And don't rush through it, okay? Let's say it at a decent pace, like we were speaking to someone, okay? Instead of our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, blah, 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 okay? And we don't have to be too slow, but just let's think about what we're saying, okay? Our Father, who art in
heaven, hallowed be thy name.
Thy
Thy
kingdom
kingdom
come,
come,
thy
thy
will be
will be done
on
on
earth.
earth as it is in heaven.
Give us
Give
this
us this
Day
day
daily bread.
bread, and forgive us our
trespasses,
as we
as we
forgive
forgive those who
those
trespass against us.
and lead us
Lead us
not
not
into
into
temptation,
temptation,
but
but
deliver us
deliver us from evil.
evil. For thine
For thine is the
kingdom,
kingdom,
the
and
the
power,
power,
and the
and the
glory.
glory,
Forever.
forever and ever.
Amen.
Amen.
Okay, so think about it. Okay, have a good week.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you,
Great
Barbara.
lesson.
Next Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ta-ta.
Thanks, Pam.
Thanks.
I think it all worked.
I hope so.
We'll find
I have
out.
to figure out how to be permanent host. I was getting worried. You weren't gonna be on
Well,
it.
I was thinking, as long as you come up as a co-host every week without me putting you in, that'll work okay.
Yeah, but I didn't today, so I had to wait for you to assign me. That's why
I know.
I'll have to figure that out. Okay.
You know what? Let's do some. Well, no, that won't work because there's just two of us. Well, let's see what happens next week. If I have to enter you again, then I may have to ask Aaron how to make it.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.